How can you transform your trading in 1 month? I'm talking about making dramatically more progress in your trading than you normally would. I'm going to share with you in this video the exact approach that you need to use. This is the same approach we use with our members, and we've seen some great results. In just the past month or so, 2 members reached the stage where they're ready to go for funding. Other members transformed their analysis to start finding great opportunities. And 1 member, who was struggling to find any trades in their simulator sessions, opened 31 trades and achieved a 56.7% return. Many of our members praised the process for helping them to progress, and almost everyone who followed it correctly saw great benefits. Now, rather than immediately sharing the plan with you, I want to explain everything in detail. This way you can see that it's logical, evidence-based, and effective, like what we try to achieve with everything here at Duomo. And hopefully this means that you will take action instead of just disregarding it as just another template. I truly believe that this will add value for you and provide you with huge benefits. When you first start trading, you're constantly learning new skills, techniques, concepts, and your development looks like this. But then over time, it begins to flatten out, and eventually it starts to stagnate. Your progress just seems to plateau. And there are 2 common reasons for this. You don't know what you don't know, so it becomes more difficult to try and figure out exactly what you need to improve or learn, or you stay in your comfort zone, often without realizing it. You feel comfortable doing your analysis and executing trades, so you spend your time doing that instead of continuing your development. What was once purposeful practice slowly becomes ordinary practice. And as Anders Ericsson says, ordinary practice is not enough. To reach elite levels of performance, you need to constantly push yourself beyond your abilities and comfort level. It feels frustrating when you stagnate. You're aware your trading isn't at the level you want it to be, and you're not progressing quickly enough towards that anymore. But most of the time, you still just continue doing what you're doing and hope your results will eventually improve. But think about what top football teams do, like those in the Premier League. They play 1 or 2 matches per week, but they're also training multiple times per week, studying footage, getting insights from coaches, working on their physical conditioning, and much more. So imagine you're a striker who just can't seem to score. Would you continue doing what you're doing and hope for slow improvement over time? Unlikely. Instead, you'd identify the issue, spend time training it, getting feedback from coaches, running drills until you get it right. You know, people often act as if trading exists in a bubble and they'll only look for trading related answers to their problems. But most of the time, the insights that you need can be found elsewhere. Like, watch this clip with former Arsenal player Alexander Lacazette talking to the assistant coach.
Benzema, top goal scorer. The best. Look at his movement. What's the readjustment? Oh, he gets a little bit lucky, but maybe because of his movement, he earns the luck. The only criticism at times, Lacquer, that I could say to you is that sometimes you're not in the position to score because you're either involved in the build-up too much, or you've just been a little bit late, or you've only done 1 movement. With 1 movement, 2 movements, 3 movements, in between centre-back and full-back, the more we can do this, the more chance we've got of scoring. Your goals ratio should go up because you can finish, that's not the issue. And sometimes you may have to be selfish to be in a position to score and not link play and let the number 10 do this. You know? Okay. Yeah.
Now, unfortunately for us Arsenal fans, I think there are actually many other areas he needs to improve on, really. But as you saw in the clip, for Lacazette to improve in that area, he has to focus less on other things. Maybe his build-up play will suffer for a while, but it will then lead to improvements in the area that needs developing the most. Over the years, I've seen that this is something that bothers people when they're learning to trade. They worry that if they neglect certain areas of their trading to focus on one area, their overall ability will start to decline. So they try to do everything all the time rather than focusing on the areas that need it the most. And so they miss out on progressing further and faster. You know, it's true that when you stop using or developing a skill, you go through skill decay. But in reality, the amount of skill decay that you experience over a short period, like 1 month, is negligible. Studies suggest that complex skills like trading start deteriorating after more than 2 months, if not used or practiced frequently. And the more proficient you are with that skill, the slower that decline will be. So the progress you could achieve from 1 month of focus on one area would completely overshadow the sacrifice that you're making in terms of skill decay. Sometimes you need to take one step back to take 2 steps forward. So this is what we challenge our members to do with the monthly transformation contest that I mentioned in the last video. We thought of it like these fitness transformations, where you see these extreme before and after photos. How can we achieve dramatic improvements in a short space of time? Well, spend 1 month hyper-focused on the area of your trading that either needs it the most or will have the biggest impact on your overall development. Then for us, the winner each month gets a prize, like a £100 Amazon gift card or something that will help their trading. And for our quarterly prize, we're paying for someone's funding application. But we don't judge it just based on the end result, like how big the transformation was. It's also judged on how well planned it was, because there's no point rewarding big successes that happen by luck. Instead, if something is specifically planned in a deliberate, realistic, and measurable way, the process becomes more predictable and repeatable. Think of success like building a house. So your initial development, the sort of rapid progress that you make right at the start, is like setting the foundations. After that, it's not about trying to click your fingers and magically see a finished house overnight. Instead, each well-planned monthly transformation is like stacking one brick at a time in a dependable way. So let me walk you through exactly how to do that. The transformation plan has 3 sections: identifying the area of transformation, planning the steps, and reviewing your progress. So the first 2 sections need to be completed before you start your month, and then the third section is completed during and at the end of your month. And I recently shared this template with those of you who have already gone through our free trading masterclass, and if you haven't done that yet, I'd really recommend that you check it out. You'll find the link down below. Now, you should complete this document with as much detail as possible and make sure it's written down. Don't just keep it in your head. There are a few really important reasons for this. Firstly, it provides you with a clear plan to follow each day, rather than anything being left vague or open-ended, so you're more likely to take the right actions as you progress through the month. Secondly, it avoids hindsight bias. Without setting these things down in writing, it's really easy to get to the end of the month and believe you achieved what you set out to, even if you didn't. But by writing it specifically and clearly, you can judge your performance more objectively and make any changes or improvements for the next one that you go through, which is really useful. Thirdly, it's been found that those who write their objectives or goals in detail are significantly more likely to achieve them than those who don't. One study found it to be between 1.2 and 1.4 times more likely, which is a big amount. And finally, by having a detailed record of all of your transformations, you can revisit them from time to time to see how far along you've come and which approaches led to the best progress. So let's begin with the first section, identifying the specific area of improvement. Just like a SMART goal, we're making sure that things are specific, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Latham and Locke, who pioneered SMART goals, discovered through their research that elevated performance comes when 5 principles are being met: clarity, challenge, commitment, feedback, and task complexity. And their research spans decades with lots of evidence for this, including one that they did with lumberjacks, where they found that planning in this way improved performance and productivity by between 11 and 25%. So we start by identifying the right area to focus on, and the first 4 questions that you see there combine to help you make that decision. So together, they're helping you ensure that you're identifying the right thing, because that's critically important. Now, if you're not sure where to start with this, try thinking about general problem areas that you have, or maybe aspects that you've discovered from your trading data that are holding back your performance. And then from there, think logically about which trading actions or decisions are contributing to that negative impact or that underperformance. What is it that you're doing that's leading to that result? What area is it that it could be? Now, if there's more than one area of improvement, which is the case for most people, narrow it down to the one that's having the biggest negative impact or that would lead to the biggest overall benefit if you improved it. And in some cases, it's sort of like a lead domino, that once you solve this one thing, it's going to have a positive knock-on effect in other areas of your trading. So if that's the case, you get more bang for your buck by sort of knocking over that lead domino. So once you've considered all four of those questions together to help you identify that area, then go ahead and answer each of those questions in the document. So firstly, what specific area are you planning to focus on? For example, you might say, I will focus on my trade management. Then, what led you to choose that area for improvement? And here you want to provide a detailed reason for that being the most important area to focus on for this month. For example, if it was trade management, you might put, once I'm in a profitable trade, I make my decisions based on gut feeling. So by improving my trade management decisions, I can maximize my opportunities and improve my returns more than any other change that I could work on. Then, how is this currently affecting your trading? Now, if you have any evidence from your trading data, you can add that in here. So for example, you might say, I can see in 30% of my profitable trades, I exited too early and would have achieved much bigger profits if I stayed in longer. 25% of my losing trades were initially in a profit greater than 2R. So if we have an answer like that, we can say, okay, great, if we work on trade management, it's going to improve it. But more importantly, where possible, you should provide a vivid description of how it's affecting your trading. Something like, I don't feel confident once I'm in a trade. Instead, I just feel uncertainty and a lack of clarity. I watch every price tick, debating whether I should take action. Once I exit a trade, I feel frustrated when I watch what the price ends up doing next. Remember, this process is like a before and after. So by making it vivid and detailed, you're feeling the pain of the current situation. This helps motivate you to take action and move away from that pain. And also at the end of the month, it will make things much easier to recognize the progress that you've made without being influenced by things like the peak end rule or other hindsight related biases. Next, explain the benefits. Knowing specifically how your trading will benefit from this transformation allows you to see that brighter future that you're moving towards. Again, this helps with motivation as you're moving away from that pain that you just described towards pleasure. But this question also serves as a way of checking if this is the right transformation to focus on. Sure, it might be an area of improvement, but are there other priority areas that could provide greater benefits? So these questions aren't just for documenting the transformation plan, they're also prompts to help you to think through these different areas and to ensure that you're identifying the right area of focus. So spend time thinking deeply about all of these questions before you commit that plan to writing and go ahead with that transformation month. Now you need to nail down that specific transformation that you're going to be working on. So you've identified the area, but now what's the specific transformation? And you should word it in a way that describes the end point. So in other words, what you'll be able to do by the end of this month that you're not currently doing. For example, if trade management is your area of focus, well, you're not going to fix everything all in 1 month. That's not realistic. So what specific transformation can you make now that will help you get on the way to achieving that? What's the first brick that you can lay down, knowing that you'll be stacking other bricks one at a time in future transformations? So in this case, you might focus on scaling out. You've recognized that some profitable trades are ending in losses and some are being closed too early. So if you can learn the right time to scale out of your positions, that will put you further towards fixing that area. So by the end of this month, I'll have clarity over when I should partially scale out from open trades. Now it's clear, you know what you're trying to achieve in this month. Next, you need to assess if this is ambitious enough. If it's something that you're likely to achieve in a regular month without going through this transformation process, if you could just achieve it by doing what you're already doing, it's not really a transformation, is it? You need to be moving in the challenge skill zone, also known as the zone of proximal development. This is something we discussed in a previous video about why trading is so difficult to learn. You can click up there to watch it. Basically, the gap between your current level and where you're trying to get to can't be perceived as being huge, or it becomes demotivating and it leads to negative emotions like frustration, self-doubt, even depression. But if it's not wide enough, it can also be demotivating and it can feel boring. If you want to learn more about this stuff, go and watch that video and it explains it in more detail. A paper by Jonathan Cohen called The 85% Rule for Optimal Learning explained that your goals should be difficult enough that you get things right 85% of the time and make mistakes 15% of the time. So mistakes, errors, They feel frustrating, but that frustration actually engages certain parts of our brain to be more alert, focused, and able to learn. And this is one of the key principles of neuroplasticity. Now, of course, it's not possible to know precisely what will that 85% level be ahead of time. So instead, you just have to use your initiative with that being a general benchmark that you're aiming for. And actually, getting the right skill-challenge balance is one of the prerequisites for achieving a flow state. And getting into flow when you're learning and developing can give you a significant advantage. A study by Brain Monitoring and the US Department of Defense found that getting a beginner into a flow state accelerated their learning, meaning that it took 50% less time than normal to reach an expert level. So if you want to cut down your development time and get to that expert level quicker, then getting into a flow state is a good way to do that. And you'll only do that if you get into that skill challenge sweet spot. And finally, for this section, the final question is this transformation realistic to achieve in 4 weeks? Obviously, if it's not realistic to achieve in 4 weeks, then it's not going to be a monthly transformation. But maybe it is realistic to achieve in 4 weeks, but only if you make sacrifices. These might be sacrifices in other areas of your trading, just like that clip that we watched with Alexander Lacazette. Or they may be things that you're doing that take up time, like what if you're going through the financial news each day, looking at the fundamentals, and actually if you cut that out, you'll have time to focus on this area. Alternatively, it may be sacrifices outside of trading, like having less free time for a month. Maybe you'll just sacrifice watching TV in the evenings or playing games for a certain period of time just to get this transformation done. And if you do that, it's possible to achieve it in the 4 weeks. So what you should do is actually detail the sacrifices that you're willing to make, and therefore you're making that commitment to yourself. Okay, so now we get into the nuts and bolts of how you actually achieve the transformation. What specific steps will you take and how will you measure your progress? Because if something isn't measurable, it's much more difficult to improve on it. So the first thing you need to do is set out the specific actions you'll take. Don't be broad with this. Instead, make the actions as specific and clear as possible. It doesn't have to be the same thing every day throughout the whole month. Maybe there are several things that you'll do. Maybe there's a progression, but make it clear and specific. Not only is this another one of the prerequisites for flow, having clear goals, but it also means you're less likely to procrastinate or be wasteful during your learning sessions. When it's time to work, you'll know exactly what to do, because often it's deciding what to do that leads people to start procrastinating, getting distracted, and generally wasting their time. So, for example, if we're looking at that scaling out transformation that we've been discussing so far, maybe it's like this. Week 1, revisit the strategic risk management section in the Duomo program and complete all purposeful practice activities. Week 2, take all of my previous trade entries and open them in a simulator or TradingView replay mode so I can't see what happens next. Manage the trades using the scaling out approaches I learned in week 1. Review any differences from the original trades. Week 3, go through 1 month in a trading simulator, enter trades but only use scaling out for trade management decisions. Review how far the decisions were from optimal. Week 4, follow the same approach from week 3, but this time in the live markets with a demo account. Now, this is just a short example, but the more specific and more detailed you can be, the better it's going to be for you. Then throughout the month, when other things come up, you'll be able to see if they fit your plan, and if not, maybe park them until the end of the transformation month and stay focused, stay on track. The next question is there to prompt you to think about the actions in the right way. Now, my advice is to start with the end in mind. So imagine you've successfully achieved the transformation and then work backwards from there. So what would the final actions be? What about the ones before those and so on? That's a great way to think about things like this. Then, and this is so important, how will you measure your progress? And it's important that you choose something that's specific to the area you're trying to focus on. You shouldn't use an overall measure, like returns, for example, because that's too broad and you won't be able to tell if improvements are from that specific area you're trying to improve on. And also, it depends too much on the markets themselves, which aren't in your control. So you need to find something specific to the area you're working on. And you know, it can be difficult sometimes to find the ideal measure to focus on, but if you're struggling, just try approaching it from different angles. Don't get sort of trapped by looking at the standard trading data and thinking, what can I use? Think differently about it. Maybe even use different measures for the different tasks that you're doing throughout the month. So for example, week 1 might be about the percentage completed of the lessons and activities. This is all the stuff you want to get through, you know that's 100%. So what percentage are you completing each day? Then on one particular day, if you're under the percentage you need to go to reach to complete this in a week, the next day you know you need to do more, and so on and so on. Week 2 might focus on how much better the performance is on your trades now, having sort of revisited the scaling out parts of the program compared to the original trades that you took. So there's a comparison there that you can see the difference between the performance. Week 3 and week 4 might be a measure showing how far you were from optimal. Or, as we'll discuss in a moment, it might be about how many mistakes are pointed out to you when you go to get feedback in the community. Now, depending on which area you're focusing on, you may also want to consider the pairing principle. This was made popular by Andy Grove in his book High Output Management, and he says, measures tend to direct your attention towards what they're monitoring. It's like riding a bicycle. You'll probably steer it where you are looking. Then, as Mark Andreessen points out, the problem with arbitrary metrics in complex situations, they tend to backfire. Give emergency services drivers rigid response time metrics, and they'll tend to stay close to urban centres. The solution is that every measure should have a paired measure that's addressing the possible negative consequences of the first measure. I'll give you an example because that's a bit of a tricky one to get your head around when you first hear it. So for someone wanting to open more trades, if they measure the number of trades that they open, it's just going to encourage them to open low quality ones. They're not saying the quality of the trade there, they're just saying open more trades. So instead they need to pair quantity with another measure that avoids the negative consequences. So for example, maybe it's number of trades with a positive expectancy. That's then looking at the thing they want to improve and something that's maintaining the quality so they don't have the negative consequences. The next question was more relevant for our members because that's who this was originally for. They have access to our community so they can get instant feedback. But if you don't have something like that, think about how you can keep yourself accountable. And it's even better if you can build this into your planned actions and therefore create some sort of flywheel effect. And if you're not sure about that, then check out this video up here where we talked about the flywheel effect in relation to your trading. So in this case, it might be something like complete a trade, get feedback in the community, assess and implement the feedback, complete another trade, get feedback, and so on and so on. Flywheel goes round and round. Then, importantly, and this is something a lot of people don't consider, how will you know that you've achieved the transformation? What measure will you have achieved to know that it's completed? What's that trigger point? This should align with your description of the successful transformation from the first section of the plan, but if not, then you either need to change the actions that you're planning or reassess the intended transformation. By making this clear and measurable, it will help you track how far you are from achieving it as you progress through the month. And this also taps into your intrinsic drivers to help you push yourself even more to achieve more than you would in a regular month. So you don't want something vague or that leaves things open to interpretation or makes you unsure at the end of the month if you've even actually succeeded or not. You know, there are 3 main reasons that people don't achieve their goals. They don't take the actions they were meant to take, they were unrealistic with the goal they were trying to achieve, or other things happened that got in the way. Now, what we've gone through so far deals with those first 2 points. The final question in this section deals with the third one. Think through all the things that may go wrong and then find a way to mitigate those risks or have a contingency plan. Know how you're going to deal with them. Now, I'd recommend going through a pre-mortem analysis. This is something that was developed by the psychologist Gary Klein. Basically, a post-mortem analysis happens at the end of something to assess what happened, but a pre-mortem analysis is done before you even start. So you imagine you're at the end and you failed. Then brainstorm all the possible things that could have led to that failure. Now you know all the things that could go wrong, so you can have a plan for them. Now, don't just think about trading related issues, also think through the personal side and even the influence of other people sort of interfering and sort of swaying your decisions or getting you to go and do other things. Think about all of that. Now, one of our members did an amazing job with this. They set out processes or protocols to follow when certain situations occur that might affect them negatively. So for example, since failure is just an inevitable part of learning, they knew that there'd be some L's along the way which may change their mindset. So they already planned exactly how they'd get their minds back on track in those inevitable moments. Okay, so everything that we've been through so far is what you need to do before you start the transformation month. And now we get to the final section, which is to be completed during the transformation month with a final review that happens at the end of the transformation month. And I think all of it's quite self-explanatory, so we'll go through this bit quite quickly. I'll give you a brief overview, but I know it's tempting to skip this part of the process. A lot of people don't like doing the review part at the end, but it's really important. Self-reflection and self-correction have been shown to be a really important part of a development process and actually contribute to accelerated learning. So don't skip over this bit. So the weekly reviews are a chance to think about what went well and what you maybe need to adjust to make the next week even better. You can set yourself action items of things that you need to focus on for the next week. So it's just a chance to continue to course correct so you have the best opportunity to achieve the transformation. And it's important that you're brutally honest with yourself about whether you actually did the actions that you're meant to and whether you're progressing in the way that you need to achieve the transformation. With things like this, I always remind myself about Solomon's paradox, which we actually discussed in a video a while ago, which was all about overcoming negative self-talk in trading. We'll link it up there. So it's a cognitive bias that we have where we give different and usually better advice to other people than we do for ourselves. So a good way to sort of make use of this is to try and imagine yourself as a third party reviewing what you've done, or imagine that you're giving feedback to someone else. So what would you say to improve the chances of that person staying on course and completing the transformation? How can you be critical and pick up on the things that they need to do better? And then at the end, you do a final review. And again, be brutally honest with yourself about whether you did the actions that you were meant to do, whether you got distracted or sidetracked, and whether you genuinely achieved the transformation or not. You know, it's only by being honest with yourself here that you can actually provide answers to the final two questions that will actually be useful to you. You see, by documenting this in detail each time you go through a transformation month, your transformations will continue to get better and better. Most people are over or under ambitious for the first one, but by going through this process, the whole process, you'll tighten up the next one and the next one and the next. You'll take on that feedback and eventually you'll find that sweet spot where your plans are reliable and the outcomes therefore are more predictable. So once you complete this transformation, take on the feedback that you've given yourself or that you've got from me or the community if you're one of our members, and start planning the next one. Each month, brick by brick, you'll be constructing the trader that you want to be. You're paving a dependable path towards your long-term goals. No more trying to do everything all at once and hoping for the best. Just like everything we do here, we've tried to make this as logical and evidence-based as possible. So I hope you found this useful, and if you have, please hit the like button, and I hope you'll take on board everything you've learned in this session to start creating that more reliable path for yourself. And if you're planning to do that, leave a comment below, make a commitment, and let me know what you'll be doing. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.